Towards the end of last year, I did a series of charity live streams, and the poll winner for games I should play was Mortal Kombat Special Forces. Unfortunately, and I do feel bad about this, I had to quit Special Forces because it was too friggin' boring for me to sustain a full stream. In a panic, I switched to Hellboy Asylum Seeker, which may not be better than Special Forces, but it's a hell of a lot more interesting! Asylum Seeker is a port of a PC game from the year 2000 called Hellboy Dogs of the Night. But while the port was made right away after the original, it wasn't released. I couldn't find an explanation for why the PlayStation version was shelved, but it might have had to do with Dogs of the Night averaging 1 out of 10 review scores in Europe. Skip ahead 4 years though, and Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy movie becomes a big Hollywood blockbuster. Some executive realizes, wait a second, we have a finished Hellboy game gathering dust somewhere, and they slap on a new name and push it out for a console that's been retired for years. Asylum Seeker released exclusively for the PlayStation in 2004, years after the PlayStation 2 had become Sony's new flagship. For context, it was released the same year as Halo 2, and the gulf between the games speaks for itself. So how did the 1 out of 10 game ported to a retired system after being shelved for 4 years turn out? How do you think? He's no good! I think the funniest part of this whole thing is the new title, Asylum Seeker. You spend the whole game in an asylum and you're looking for stuff, so... Asylum Seeker! Got it. The game opens
there are
on an...
beings older than God, called the Nohaks Canis. In the darkest corner of the universe they wait until
what was that
someone
again?
on the night of the eclipse opens the gate
Stop.
and unleashes them onto Earth, bringing eternal chaos.
Please
And
stop.
twin brothers schooled in magic have discovered a way to cheat death.
Okay, I'd probably have an easier time following your crappy story if the exposition weren't blitzed out as fast as possible by a rambling old man with no subtitles the literal second the game starts. I caught none of that past some generic evil force out to conquer the world. Alright, he's saying there are ancient beings called the Nohaks Canis who need someone to open a gateway so they can come to Earth and unleash hell. And there are 2 magic brothers, one's good and one's trying to unleash the Mohawks famous. So, generic evil force out to conquer the world. Then we cut over to a cemetery where an agent from Hellboy's division named Peter finds something and gets attacked by a demon dog. A whole 3 days later, great turnaround time, Hellboy and Agent Sarah show up to investigate Peter's disappearance. What the hell? Okay, I will admit that I've only seen the live-action Hellboy movies, including the 2 that are straight trash, but I thought Hellboy had a pretty distinctive look. Big overcoat and... pants! Why does he run around this game in nothing but short shorts? Is this a rescue mission or a Hawaiian vacation?
Who wears short shorts? I wear short shorts!
And his head looks shrunken and his jaw's almost missing so they don't even have to attempt lip syncing. This entire character model is deeply upsetting, but it's not half as upsetting as the controls. Asylum Seeker uses tank controls, but it feels even worse than in similar titles like Shitty of Angels. When you try to turn, Hellboy tends to almost jump from one direction to the next to where precision is next to impossible. While turning, the game will misread it as you trying to back up, meaning Hellboy will leap backwards for no reason. And just trying to walk will have Hellboy frequently stop to turn instead of going forward, leading to frustrating, jittering movement everywhere that you go. What's worse is this is an adventure game where you need to pick up items and interact with puzzle elements fairly often, and the interactive hotspots tend to be tiny, which means you're going to fidget with the imprecise controls a lot every time you need the game to actually work. You can, of course, move with the more precise control pad. You need to fully disable analog controls to do so because the dumbass game can't track both. But the pad has its own issues, namely that your movement speed is pathetic unless you hold R1 absolutely everywhere that you go. Just trust me, neither control scheme is good. It just comes down to what flavor of turd you can stomach. A short ways into the level, you fight 2 zombies, and the combat is actually pretty simple. The way it works is you hold square, and that's it. Square throws default punches, and none of the other buttons do anything. There are no combos, no alternative attacks, no blocks, no dodges. Triangle pulls out weapons. that are friggin' useless. Throwing basic punches is the entire combat system. Hellboy doesn't even use that big-ass stone fist on his right arm, except for like every fourth strike, and it doesn't even do extra damage. All that doesn't mean combat's not a pain in the ass, though, because the enemies block a lot of your attacks, and there is nothing you can do about it. Basic goons can take well over a dozen punches, thanks entirely to messed up RNG. You quickly run into the game's first boss, this giant bird thing, and it's probably easier to kill than the basic enemies because it actually takes some damage. Schnick says that a lot of people just quit at this boss about 10 minutes in. The game's illustrious puzzles begin as find button or key, use button or key, try to figure out what in the hell you just unlocked. But Hellboy quickly gets separated from Sarah and trapped in some catacombs while a hell dog thing attacks Sarah off screen. So, gonna be a solo mission, I take it. First, you use a lighter to light some torches to proceed into the catacombs. You don't so much need the torch to see, it's just that if you try to walk forward without the torch, you'll take damage from nothing! The empty air hurts you! Next, you come across 4 rocks and 3 pedestals and have to arrange the rocks into a specific combination. You're not given a hint, but eventually I notice the pillars sync to different levels and I realize it goes by weight. Granted, the camera's so bad that you can barely gauge how anything shifts around, but it's better than nothing. Quickly, you find an asylum with a blue ghost dude whom I don't think ever shows up again, who tells you that evil stuff's been happening due to a prophecy. This is the closest anyone will ever get to explaining the plot to our hero, but Hellboy has other concerns.
Relax, I just need to find my friend Sarah.
Bro, not only did you walk as far away from Sarah as possible, but when you left she was being mauled by a monster hound. I think Sarah's halfway to hyena shit, and I don't think bumming around Arkham's going to fix that! You finally reach the asylum and begin the core gameplay loop, that being wandering around looking for keys and trying to guess where you're supposed to go. A process that, as you can imagine, is not improved by the shitty controls. There's a hidden room in the library with a dude named Pavlov inside. Does he actually do anything? Doesn't look like it. You fight another boss, a crazy boob lady nurse who just tries to whack you to death until you throw her out a window. One of the more peculiar things to happen to me in a game, there's a puzzle where you get a bunch of medications and sort them out to the different patients, which doesn't seem to do anything, and the patients reset if you leave while the pills don't respawn, so hope that wasn't important. And of course there are a few orderlies to fight, and I happen to have picked up Hellboy's revolver. You press triangle to equip it, hold square to fire, and then it doesn't do a damn thing! Seriously, I tried the gun on the first 2 orderlies that attack you, and they block your shots with wooden planks. And given that there is 0 mechanic for actually aiming the gun, I'm not sure it would have worked even if they hadn't blocked. You eventually find a crazy guy who menaces you with another gun, and the shooting mechanics are so stiff and imprecise that it's pretty much impossible to hit him without taking multiple shots yourself. Anytime you actually try the damn thing, you just have to hold fire and hope to get lucky. I can't control it any better than that. This gun is useless! Eventually, you run into another mini-boss in this monster that clings to the ceiling. My first thought was to try shooting the thing, it's a big enough target, but I can't. Your gun just spontaneously disappears from your inventory when you fight this thing. You know why? Because you're meant to fight the boss using a pole in the back of the room, and they didn't program any way to switch weapons. You literally can't carry a melee and a projectile weapon at once, even though there's still an unused L1 button on the controller to cycle weapons! And this fight sucks. You have to poke this monster by jabbing straight up with the pole, only the camera is such catastrophic ass that the monster will be off screen and you just have to guess where the freaking thing is! And no, letting it come to you is not an option because it shoots at you. We are rapidly approaching the point where you have to ask, Did anybody play test this? Oh no. The game lets you have Hellboy use one of the toilets in the cells, and if you use a toilet, it won't let you leave the room until you wash your hands. Funny, but this is where the dev team's effort went, and not boss encounters that are actually playable. When playing Asylum Seeker via RetroArch emulation, I ran into an utterly maddening glitch. Upon entering certain rooms, the game would just lock up all the controls. The only way around the bug was to make sure I enabled or disabled analog controls before entering said room, since both control configurations pissed the game off at different times. However, Schnick took my save file and tried the game on another emulator called DuckStation, and the same room worked fine, so Schnick saved me from ranting about my own problem and looking like an idiot. I checked against online playthroughs, and all the other problems I ran into are accurate. I'm just stuck having to quick save every other room to make sure the game doesn't lock on me! But now I can get back to the game, slowly rotating 4 angel statues to unlock a door, with, to my knowledge, 0 hints as to the solution. Maybe this lady has a hint or something. Crap, I already gave her the pill that she's asking for. Maybe this pill will help you. Cheese and rice! What kind of vomit texture was that? She puked fire! Having officially gotten stuck, I turned to the classic break in case of emergency and looked for walkthroughs, and there's exactly one walkthrough for Asylum Seeker on GameFAQs. The gray pill with no directions goes to the Pavlov guy in the library who gives you a key. That's not super unfair to figure out, but it feels jarring that 2 different puzzles in 2 different locations are connected. And the angel statues? You get that combination from finding a blank letter and reading it in front of the fireplace. What? Like, I knew the puzzle had to do with invisible ink, but how do you guess that the ink only works in front of the fireplace? Literally all you're told is that the ink smells like lemons. Where's the connection between lemons and fire? Tell me how that makes any sense! And I don't tend to bring up clipping unless it gets egregious. With older 3D games, textures crossing into each other is just kind of a necessary evil. But Asylum Seeker looks like trash. There's a building in the courtyard where it looks like you can just hop inside through a hole in the roof. You can't. The roof texture just disappears. When Hellboy climbs over walls to stop and jam some fans, both of his legs clip through the wall, both coming and going. You talk to a wizard whose beard vanishes because it keeps clipping inside of his chest, and every single time a cutscene does a close-up of Hellboy's face, his horns fight each other to see which clips in front of the other. You walk through an underground tunnel where light's coming in from the outside, and the light is rendered as a solid wall that fully blocks your view. And there are rooms where you can just phase inside of solid textures like they're not even there, to the point I almost got stuck inside a pillar permanently. And the game's only got 1 save point per chapter, so you can lose half an hour of progress to a random game bug. Even when the game's working, you can spot lines from where different tiles comprising the game world don't entirely come together. Like they just barely finished this game before pushing it onto a shelf. Textures botch up and you clip into walls everywhere you go. It's kind of astounding that I didn't fall out of the game world. You just wander aimlessly through the asylum until you find some old guy, who's apparently the good wizard who's fighting the Fohawks Heinous. He tells you that a portal to hell is about to open due to his brother Callan. I'm going to reference Callan from Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, since I'm not lucky enough for it to be Callan from Code Geass. The wizard needs an amulet to stop Callan. I get it, Infernities can be a tough batch of monsters, but Hellboy doesn't have the amulet. Clearly the only solution is to yeet Hellboy 666 years back in time to grab the amulet after its last usage. I'm sorry, the sudden casualness of this development and the goofy Looney Tunes title card for time travel are impossible for me to take seriously. Like, this was the wizard's plan A. What the hell?
Ah, crap.
You drop back into the catacombs of the asylum, and I've lost my inventory. Well, I guess that's no great loss. I mean, it's not like there are many items in the game. The game obliterated the health pack that I was saving, and I'm stuck at low health. You dick! Within a few rooms, you get stuck. There's a locked door and no key in sight. You pull a chain and then punch some pillars to collapse the ceiling, and that drops a key. And I had to look that up in a walkthrough because I tried both of those things and neither of them worked! The hit detection for interacting with the chain is so freaking picky that I just assumed it didn't even work. And for some reason, punching the pillars doesn't work unless you pull this unrelated chain first! Oh, and just to pile on some stupid, Hellboy finds a shield that he keeps referring to as a plate, and there's an axe you can't pick up because it's stuck into a stump of wood. Hellboy. Superhero. Powers include super strength, armed with a big-ass stone hand called the Right Hand of Doom, is stymied by a stump of wood. Brilliant. You pretty much just slowly wander the asylum looking for keys to open more doors. There are barely even puzzles here. Oh, you're trapped in a room with a boiler that's killing you, but there's some water and a bucket. I wonder what you're supposed to do. Also, Hellboy, born in hell, fire and brimstone hell, is dying to heat. Right. Strangely enough, there are two puzzles that require you to kill farm animals. One by luring a pig to drown and fill up a well, and one by picking up a chicken to roast it alive to feed to some whiny farmhand. And the dude doesn't even eat the chicken, he eats a clump of empty air. Nom nom.
Hooray!
Where I got stuck, and where I turned to the walkthrough again, is it's pretty obvious that you can get to the asylum's roof, and you do it by pushing stone pillars. Yes, Hellboy can't wedge an axe out of some wood, but he can push around stone pillars twice his size. And the reason I missed this, again, I tried interacting with a pillar, and nothing happened! And even once you realize that you can push the pillars, the camera sucks so hard, you're not even sure where you're trying to reach. The rooftop is off screen. And while very slowly pushing these pillars around one square at a time, I couldn't help but notice this game is missing a ton of sound effects and music because this all happens in total dead silence. Like, they weren't even trying with this. The game at least has a sense of humor. You can pick up a dude's decapitated head and use it to pass a guard that has bad eyesight. And said guard then turns into a giant zombie monkey boss. Just a reminder, this is supposed to be part horror game. The payoff to all this is you run into a zombie king who says that they've already stopped the Blowcox Magus off screen, because why would we want to actually experience the cool or horrific stuff driving the story? To learn this, you need to figure out where in the hell you need to stand for the game to register that you're trying to use the two items that wake up the king that do, in fact, belong in this room! How many times are we gonna do this dance? Now here's where things get weird. The entire third level builds up a confrontation with a villain called the Inquisitor, and once you talk to the king, he shows up and swears that you shall die and all that crap. But then the Inquisitor doesn't fight you. Bro just disappeared. At first I started freaking out that the game broke and worrying that my save got corrupted or something, but the truth is so much dumber. According to my walkthrough, you're supposed to fight the Inquisitor, then head to the tower and fight two statues. You go inside the tower, solve a huge clock tower puzzle, and then you get to the boss of this level. But when I was playing, none of that happened. I just walked straight to the tower, unmolested, went to the elevator, and got dropped at the boss right away. And then it hit me. The GameFAQs walkthrough is a mislabeled guide for Dogs of the Night, the PC version, and Asylum Seeker cut tons of content out of the original game. The nuns in the library are supposed to give you hints to look for a key as well as some background on the Inquisitor. That dialogue was cut. There are supposed to be save points in the room with the king and near the secret library, They were cut. In fact, multiple save points throughout the game were cut until the bastards left you exactly one per level. The boss fights with the statues and the Inquisitor? Cut. The clock tower puzzle? Cut. A fight with the zombie who decapitated that monk? Cut. Music box extras that go with the pipe organs that you can find? Cut. There are even supposed to be camera angles showing you the hole in the library's roof to give you a hint to how you get the key. Even those camera angles were cut. The PC version also lets you carry more than one med pack, but if you try picking up a second med pack here, Hellboy bitches at you! This isn't like Daikatana on the Nintendo 64 where the port cut all of the broken shit to streamline into a functional game, and it's not like Dogs of the Night was too big to fit onto a PlayStation disc. This just reeks of cutting corners to crank the game out faster, only for said game to wind up on a shelf anyway. So the Chapter 3 boss is this thing, and even though I got a magic sword from the Zombie King, that sword is completely useless. It attacks so slowly that you are guaranteed to take hits left and right while using it, and I'm not even sure that it deals any extra damage. I just sat here mashing attacks until the monster just died out of nowhere. There is zero feedback to let you know that it's even taking damage. How is the game so lazy when it's a porting job? The work was already done for you! Hellboy just suddenly has the amulet and he gets ganked back to the present to fight Callan. You're on back to the Asylum, and the angel statues have changed into demons that kill you in one hit. If you fall for this trap and you die, you have to fight the episode 3 boss again because there's no save point between that boss and now. Oh, and the good guy wizard powerful enough to time travel centuries, whose immortal mission is to stop the Grimlock's anus, he is never seen or mentioned again. Yeah, good luck, red short stranger man. I have total confidence that you've got this. You head underground, seemingly just because it's the only place the game will let you go. You get the lady from earlier to vomit up a key, and then the game wouldn't let me pick up said key until I stood like a foot away and faced in the wrong direction. I'm out of reactions to the bad controls, so... You have to solve a water pressure puzzle by throwing switches, which you can almost tell opens valves, and then you have to backtrack to turn on the sprinklers. This confused me because there's a cutscene where Hellboy gets knocked out and wakes up in a secret lab. I thought I was in a new location to where backtracking wasn't an option. Nope, this is the same room where you got knocked out. These lazy motherfuckers just dragged Hellboy 3 feet! Pour one out for the spoony one because most of episode 4 is a sewer level, and that sewer level is a gigantic maze filled with bugs that pester you non-stop and cannot be killed. You obviously have to draw your own map to get through this, but even that's complicated since paths loop into themselves and the game has to keep cutting away to load in the middle of hallways. I'm pretty sure fellow PlayStation games like Shadow Man, Toy Story 2, even The Grinch didn't have to stop and load in the middle of a map, and they all had bigger maps than Asylum Seeker. They had no excuse. It doesn't help that playing this on RetroArch, you can count on the controls locking up every 2 or 3 screens. Oh, and this maze is supposed to have ammunition items in a few of the dead ends. They cut the ammo drops from the PlayStation version. Might as well. The gun doesn't do shit to the bugs. Clear on the other end of the map is an insect queen boss where you need to sneak under her head to reach a button that explodes her. And I hope you figured that out fast because the one save point is at the start of the maze. But I got past the queen, now I just have to operate this console. Which only took about 100 presses of the X button before the game finally decided to work! Killing the queen clears out the bugs as well as a wall that was blocking your way, which opens a full series of puzzles that make absolutely no sense. You have to free a tiny creature by operating 3 switches to lower a force field. Just take a guess. Look at this layout and try to guess what you're even trying to accomplish here. The switches rotate these little discs, and you have to line up a groove in all 3 discs with the piston. And even with that information, the panels keep locking up for no clear reason, so I just had to look up the combination. Then you stop a rotating gear to open a shortcut back through the maze, but you don't cross it by walking under the gear. That mashes you into an invisible wall and gets you killed. No. You have to walk into the gear, because Hellboy will phase right through the solid obstruction. You find a room to raise a platform so that another hallway takes you to a wrench. A wrench you can barely see between obstructions and blending into the environment. And what do you do with the wrench? You take it to this tunnel, which is so poorly textured I thought it was a door, and throw the wrench inside. Then you have to interact with the tunnel exactly 3 times in a row to make Hellboy climb inside. Everything else in the game does jack shit if you try it more than once. Why would you keep clicking on something that didn't work? This is basically a point-and-click adventure game without a point-and-click interface, and they can't even do adventure game puzzles correctly. Oh, and not that anyone cares, but they cut a hallway from the PC version where you duck down halls to avoid sparks. I'd guess because it's the only part of the sewers that made sense. You fight Callan, the ancient wizard who's trying to open a portal to hell and destroy the world, and he doesn't fight you. He teleports to one of 4 corners, and then after a few seconds, he swats like 1 foot away from himself and then disappears. He doesn't proactively attack you 1 single time. I guess Callan didn't draw into Infernity Archfiend. If you know, you know. The only reason this fight's a challenge is the controls are such steaming hot dookie that it's difficult to both spot where he's appeared and reach him before he vanishes. All because Hellboy stutters constantly while you're trying to move. The controls are the actual hazard over the story's main villain. In the PC version, Callan actually fights you using a magic staff that hucks fireballs, and once you defeat him, you can pick up that staff and use it as a powerful projectile weapon with infinite ammo, which comes in handy as the remainder of the game is fairly combat intensive. Yeah, nice. The PlayStation port cuts all of that. Callan doesn't drop anything, and you never get the staff, even though the preview image for episode 5 shows Hellboy using the staff! But they didn't cut all the enemies in chapter 5 that exist to be fought with the staff! But it's okay, you still have the gun to use through the end of the game, right? No, you don't! Because in both versions, Hellboy drops his gun as part of a scripted event to make room in his inventory for the staff! The staff that you removed! Basically, the entire weapon system is only used twice in the entire PlayStation version! You're dumped back onto the Asylum grounds, even with the different arenas. I am so tired of this one location. You fight a demon dog that barely even tries to attack you. Does it want us dead, or does it want to play fetch? You walk through a town with a few zombies who still block most of your punches. I just ran past them. 'Cause you know, that's how Hellboy should play, fleeing enemies that he's too weak to take down.
Shove it up your ass.
You find a letter from Peter that he's hidden the amulet in the church, and you need some sheet music for the combination. Anybody who's actually paying attention is bound to ask, wait, why does Hellboy need an amulet when he's already got an amulet? We spent an entire chapter time traveling to find that stupid amulet, so why do we need another one? Yeah, funny story. Callan was supposed to have dialogue when you beat him, explaining that the amulet broke during the fight, and you need to save Sarah because she's the conduit to open a portal to hell for the Roblox Danish. And they cut all of that dialogue out of the PlayStation port. So now there's no explanation for what you're doing, and the plot makes no sense. Oh, and you have to loop through the town more than once, because this game sucks. They also seriously screw you on save points. Check this out and pay close attention. Yeah, did you see it? Because I didn't. Look again. The only save point after the sewers is tucked into a corner that you run straight past. I missed the only save point in the last 2 chapters. You take the amulet and you find a hole in the ground from Callan having opened the portal because every single important thing that happens occurs before you get to see it. Hellboy jumps inside and you just plonk down in hell in front of a giant praying mantis. I have no explanation. I guess you just never fight the Botox penis. Oh, and in the PC version, Hellboy has a new character model with his horns grown back because that's what happens every time he's in hell. Yeah, take a guess if that's in the PlayStation port. Time's up, they cut it. So how do you fight the plant kaiju thing? That's cute. You thought they'd make an actual boss fight. You run in a circle and fight 4 basic zombies one at a time. That's it. Yeah, those guys that can barely even scratch you. You kill 4 and that's the end. The monster has 1 pincer that's kind of challenging to time, and that's the sum total of effort that this boss takes. You can't even really blame this on the porting job because the fight in the PC version is pretty much the same, just with a few tentacles added. But in the PC version, you at least operate some hidden switches to fry the monster so it looks like it dies. You don't even get that in the PlayStation version, so they took shit and found a way to make it shitter. You grab Sarah, they just spawn back on Earth from off-screen, and Sarah's just confused at what in the hell happened. Frankly, I know the feeling. Hellboy Asylum Seeker is friggin' terrible. It's a little awkward that Hellboy was given a puzzle adventure game instead of something more actiony, but it could have worked if the puzzles didn't suck. I feel like all the stimulating puzzles are in the first 2 chapters, and then they struggle with convoluted interfaces and designs to where you're just guessing how the stupid thing works in the first place. But even if I'm just a moron bashing away at the controller for not figuring these out, on reflection, there aren't a lot of puzzles in the first place. Or combat encounters. There's just not a lot of game here, to the point it clocks in around 3 hours with no replay value once you know what you're doing. But the real problem here is the abysmal controls, from terrible movement to interactive objects barely working. It never comes close to being in any way pleasant to play. And to find out they cut loads of content and quality of life features from the original is just insult to injury. Nobody wanted this game. Nobody wanted to make it, nobody wanted to release it, and now nobody wants to play it.
Wait a minute, this sounds like rock and or